Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Megan and I'm the owner of Paintings at BT or Painting with Megan. I hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to be painting a beautiful bluebird inspiration on a really simple branch. I'll be walking you through every step along the way. Before we begin, I'll go ahead and walk you through the supplies that I'll be using today. So I start with a canvas board, or acrylic paper. You can paint on whatever you have. Some of you may have a canvas board. Anything works. I'll be using acrylic paints. I have a range of blue, yellow, and red. I also always have black and white to create shaded and other tones. So having these colors is a great start. If you happen to have other colors, that is absolutely fine. Feel free to use whatever you have at home. During all my classes, I'll teach you how to blend along the way. So if you don't have a green, I'll teach you how to mix a green. If you want to make a purple, I'll show you how to make a purple, all those things. In addition to paints and brushes, you'll need an array of brushes from large to small sizes for all the detailed work, and for the large brushes for the larger coverage areas. I also always have a plate to mix colors on, paper plate. You could use a palette itself, that's fine. In addition, I always have a paper towel for any messes, always very handy, you never know. And then I have a cup of water to rinse my brushes. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Today's inspiration, it has a white background, but if you're interested in putting a really light, soft-colored background in, you can certainly do that. And I'm going to do a little bit of a light blue background. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of blue paint on my plate, and a little bit of white paint as well. A little bit of white paint, and I kind of put them near each other, but not too far. Now, if you have a small container like this and you're doing white paint, the two tabs on the front, the tab on the left will open the top. So if you have one of these small containers from me, you can hold the bottom firmly. I use my left thumbnail to peel the top up and open, and that will open your white paint. And you can take out two dollops or $1 of that. You always start by you can use your big brush, and you're going to find a nice light blue color of choice. And then you always want to make your colors first. I like to mix a little bit of water with my colors just to spread it out a little bit. So I might take $1 of water and just mix it around in here to loosen up the paint, stretches it a bit. I might grab another dollop of water. You can see it's creating a little bit of a milky white consistency. I'm going for a really soft background here. So take your time. We're just going to come in here and we're going to paint the entire background with a light blue color. Now I'm doing nice, smooth, horizontal brush strokes from the left to the right. You can do a single brush stroke all the way from one side to another. We aren't going to spend too much time painting this background, so don't hesitate to you can fly through this a little bit. I am using a little water on my brush along the way to really move the paint around. So the more water you use, the lighter the paint will appear, and it'll also require less paint to put in the space. So any light color that you want to add in this, feel free. So I'm just adding some nice smooth brush strokes. When you have some streaks in the sky like this is just a kind of a nice sky background. Just do some nice smooth brush strokes to fill the entire background as this nice light blue sky. Now some of you may have chosen another color to use, like a light yellow or a light pink. That's absolutely fine. Sometimes we'll leave the background white when we paint. Sometimes we'll paint the background a nice soft color. Depends on what we're doing. And you as the artist, you always have your own choices of what you want to do. And I always talk about and encourage you to kind of make those choices for yourself along the way. The more you practice painting, the more empowered you will feel to kind of make some of your own unique choices and decisions. That's one of the things I love the most about these classes. So always take your time. Take a couple deep breaths, and you can kind of settle in to this therapeutic part of kind of getting this background in place. That's a little darker, no big deal. You can use a little water on your brush, a little bit of white paint, and you can kind of paint over things, but just maintain that nice, smooth, horizontal look and feel. And if you have some dark streaks and some lighter streaks, that's okay. This is just detail in the background. We're going to be putting a lot on top of this. So our first steps are just going to be filling in this background together. Again, I'm dipping my brush in a little bit of water, maybe adding a little bit more water to this paint consistency. At any point during today's class, you want to pause the video and take it a little slower. You're absolutely welcome to do that. Everyone paints at different speeds, so just know that I always acknowledge that in my live classes as well as the recorded videos for our friends. So just always follow your own intuition around how fast or how slow you want to go. That's no problem at all. I've taught hundreds of paint classes, and I know that everyone's needs are a little bit different, and I like acknowledging that up front. Kind of takes some of the pressure off of you that you have to follow exactly what I'm doing. And I'm always going to encourage you to go at your own speed and incorporate your own details along the way. Because art is a very individual activity, and it's something that the more you practice, it feels really good to kind of get a sense of your own style, grab a little bit more water to help move some of this paint around, and we're just going to fill the entire background. The more you paint, the more you'll kind of figure out your style. And most of you are probably thinking, Megan, I have a painting style, I haven't really painted at all. But believe it or not, you do. It's really quite fun. And you may say, well, my style's probably not very good, right? It's usually what folks think. It's one of those things that it's a sense of yourself that you kind of become familiar with. The more you paint, you lean towards one thing or another. And then your style will evolve. The more you practice, the more you learn how to utilize the tools you have, which is our paints and our brushes. That's where we really start to lean more into the areas of our style that work best for us. Okay. So feel free to pause the video if you are still working on your background. Many of you are still probably working on that. Maybe give yourself, 4 or 5 more minutes to finish this up. And then when you're ready, go ahead and unpause the video and you can join me for the next step. Okay, so we're going to move to the next step. We're going to do a brown branch across this painting. So this is a blue background sky. We'll do a brown branch. One consideration I will show you before we move to the brown branch. So if you wanted to add any clouds in your sky, you could grab a smaller kind of mid-sized brush. You grab a little bit of white paint, maybe a little bit of white paint with a little bit of water. And if you wanted to add some kind of long, skinny, kind of cumulus clouds, using that flat side of your brush, you can kind of add some cumulus clouds to your sky. I like to do the long and skinny ones, like kind of just creating layers. That's one of the most beautiful things about clouds to me, is the layers they create in the sky. So if you wanted to add any clouds in, the top sides of these clouds are a little bit brighter than the bottom side. So if you wanted to do anything, find this top ridgeline of the cloud and just focus on that top ridgeline, and then you kind of soften this paint into the underside of the cloud. See that? Just like a faint little cloud in the distance. And if you just, again, top side of the cloud, just kind of follow that long ridgeline. Fill that in first, and maybe with a little water, you fill in the underside of the cloud. Okay, so I'm just going to slowly, you can do some thinner lines, just some soft clouds in the sky. It's totally optional. If you wanted to use a different brush, you could. Absolutely up to you. But if you want to take a couple minutes just to add a couple of clouds in the sky, you can. Again, the top side of these clouds are a little lighter, so with acrylic paint, we typically do lots of layers. And this is a good example of adding a little bit of a second layer on the top of these clouds. And I'm just using the tip of this brush to add a little bit more white. It's kind of a second or a third layer of white just on the top side of these clouds, and you kind of soften them in. And you'll see what that does. See how it's really starting to highlight just the tops of those clouds? That's what you can consider for this step. Just playing with just the tip of the brush. You can see the bottom side of the clouds are a little more transparent. This is just one layer of detail that I'm adding in. So again, take a couple minutes, feel free to add in a few clouds. You can grab a smaller brush if you want to, but we'll shift and we'll mix some brown together. So if you want to take a couple more minutes to make some clouds, feel free to pause the video. Otherwise, you can jump in with me and make some brown for our branch. So to make brown, it is red, yellow, and blue all mixed together. Or if you have green, you can do red and green mixed together. It's a little bit more of a sure shot than mixing everything else. All right. So again, to make brown is red and green, those holiday colors, or red, yellow, and blue. So you can pick and choose. And I'm going to grab a small brush of choice. And I'm going to get my brush a little bit wet, and you're going to mix these two colors together, and you're going to find a brown. So I'm going to spin these around, and look for a brown. Now, if you have too much green or too much red, you can kind of compromise one for the other and add a little bit more, but just take a minute to blend these together. And I'm going for a dark brown. And you want to make enough of it for the branch. The branch is going to be thin. My brown is a little more red than green, so I am going to add a little bit more green to give it a little bit more of a brown tinge. Mine right now is like a dark brick color. It's like on the edge of brown. So I'm going to grab a little bit more green and mix that in, and then we'll do the branch together. There's two branches for our picture today, but we'll make sure our brown is ready set first. Always take your time blending colors. If you wanted to create a different shade or a tone of brown than this, like if you wanted to lighten it a little bit or add a little bit of make it into a little bit more of a gray tone, having more of a gray tone into this brown, you can see this is the color right here. It's nice and dark. I can lighten it up. So if I wanted to grab a scoop of white, watch this. I can make it a little bit lighter, taking my time to mix this in. And I have a lighter brown. If you wanted to make it a little bit more of a gray tone, you could add a tiny, tiny touch of black to it, and it would give you a gray. So like this is the second color. See how that second color is a little bit lighter? That works. So one of the things you can do is as you find a brush you like, I like to spin my brush in the paint to have a nice smooth coat of paint. It's not too goopy. And now we're going to do a tree branch starting down here, and we're going to go kind of diagonal up to the top. And the bird for me is going to be in the middle. So you want to have a spot where you can put your bird. So I'm just going to do a nice thin brush stroke, and I'm going to hold my brush a little further back. And I'm just going to do a branch. And then maybe I'll add a little bit of water on my plate, create a little bit of a milky consistency, kind of loosen up some of the brown. The tip of this branch, it's going to come up here and it's going to be a little more thin. And the branch is going to have some wide points, so if you wanted to mix a little bit of water, it helps tremendously. You can kind of build out your branch as thick or as thin as you wish. My branch has some character, so it's not totally straight. I did add a little bit of water right here, and you can see it's a little bit easier. So there's that. And we'll add just a little bit of some branches coming off. We're not going to add too many, but up towards the top here, you can add just a couple of Ys, and you can make choices. So for me, my bird's going to go right here in the middle. And I'll maybe add just another branch here coming off. And wherever I have little branches, this might be where I have some flowers. And you can always add in, we're going to have lots of flowers. You're not going to add in too many branches, but I might just add in a little bit more of a branch here, kind of coming down. There we go. So you can see I'm just adding a little bit here and there. We are going to put, so it's a pretty bare branch, but that's okay. It can be a bare branch because we're going to do another branch in the foreground and it's actually going to be lighter. So you see I just have a little bit of detail here. And I'm going to mix a little bit of white. I'm going to have a lighter branch in the foreground. I'm just mixing a lighter brown. And I'm going to have another branch come over here. And it's going to kind of come right through the middle. So I'm just going to do another branch. This is just a little bit of an accent branch. There we go. And I'm just going to add in a little bit of a Y down here. And this is just creating a little bit of texture. So you can have a little bit of a branch here. We're going to add lots of flowers in this space. So the branch doesn't need to go too high. All right, so I'm going to let that dry. So we're basically, I want you to focus on a primary branch. You don't need a ton of secondaries coming off. You can do some. And then this other branch coming on top. So this is a lighter branch in the foreground. Sometimes you might want this to have a little bit of a green tone, this foreground one. So if you wanted to get a little bit of green and make it a little bit more green, you could if you wanted to. Absolutely optional. So I might mix a little bit of green with this just to give it a little bit of a different color. This is optional. You don't have to do a green. I always love experimenting and showing you one thing to do or another here. So I might put a little bit of this green color maybe on top of it, just to give it a little bit of a natural tone. And there's some kind of green like leaves that are kind of coming off this. So if you wanted to use this greenish brown color to do some kind of abstract green leaves while you're in here, you could. I'm just going to do a few. Some abstract green leaves. Totally optional on how detailed and specific you want to get with your forms and your objects. I'm just adding a little bit of green here. I might just add in a little bit of green here as a little bit of fun, unique detail. This is very abstract. These are not like real leaf shapes. Some of these may have like a little bit of point on them. Some of them may not. I am going to put a bird here in the middle with lots of flowers. So this is just really a little bit of an accent. And I'm just going to follow the flow. So I might put in just a little bit of these green leaves, maybe on some of these other branches, just as a little bit of color to kind of get us going. You could cover up some of these if you wanted to. We usually do the green after, but since I had it out, I might as well put in a little bit of green here and there. I can certainly cover some of this green up with my flowers if I want to, but these are just kind of like little green buds and leaves on these really, really simplistic branches. So feel free to add a little bit of green there. The other thing I'll share about these green leaves is that we'll add more after. And as you do your pink flowers on top in just a moment, you can easily paint over some of these if you want. It's kind of just like a fun, abstract little layer of detail for consideration. Okay, so now that we have just some fun green on and we have our branches in place, we're going to do our blue bird's body. So if you want to do a different colored bird, you absolutely can, but it's up to you. And we're going to find a nice mid-tone blue to use for our bird's body. So I have a color here, it's called Blue Lake. I'm just using a small brush, and I'm just going to find if there's a neutral kind of the base color of the bird, what color would that be? And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a lighter version of this color and a darker version for some accent detail. So you can see here, I'm just getting my blue ready for the base color of my bird. And we'll be doing a little bit of shape drawing, painting here together for the basic forms. So now one of the first shapes and forms is you're going to put in a large oval for the bird's body, where you want the bird's body for me. to be. So I'm going to put my bird's body right here in this space. And you can start out small. And you can do a bird's body. Now I'm starting out with a fairly small body. If I want to make it bigger, I can. Just do a circle-like shape. This kind of looks like a pear a little bit for the bird's body. Now on top of this bird's body, you're going to do another oval, but it's going to be a little oblong, and you're going to tilt it up to the left corner, kind of like it's looking up. You're going to put a beak here. The bird is looking up. To the left corner. And I'm making the top a little more rounded. And the bird's neck is going to connect down this edge. So it's really just starting with basic forms. You can kind of start to connect the oval to the body, like so. So you're doing that oval shape first. I did a little beak just to show you, and then the bird's body. You can put a little water on your brush. Again, spinning your brush on your plate to have a little bit more control is always a good thing. And then what you could do is, once you have these and you've kind of connected the side of your head and around the underside of the beak to the head, you're kind of connecting the shape. On the left side of the body, you can come down on the left side. And we're going to do a little bit of a wing here. So you can kind of paint a little bit of a wing. And then you're going to come down and you're going to add a tail. So there's going to be a tail coming down, a long skinny tail. You can decide how long you want your tail to be. But the wing and the tail kind of meet right here. And if you wanted to paint your tail in this color blue, feel free. But you can kind of use the tip of your brush to get a little bit of a tail in place. The tail can be as big or as small as you wish, but just take a couple deep breaths and enjoy the process. This is quite fun. The bird's wing is going to be a little bit darker, so if you wanted to paint the bird's wing this base blue, you can. But we're going to take a little bit of black. Actually, I have a little bit of brown here. I might just use a little bit of my brown. Let's see what that looks like. Oh yeah, a little bit of blue and brown. I might just outline this wing. Make it a little darker. Because it's on top of the body. And we'll add some more texture and details. So you can use the tip of your brush to kind of create some feather-like details. The wing will be darker. So we'll add some more fun kind of texture there. So don't worry too much about that. But you can see I'm just making the wing right on my body. If you wanted to take a little bit of this brown, I'm kind of mixing a little bit of blue and brown together over here. You can find your bird's legs and just kind of connect them to the tree. My legs are pretty short on this bird. You can see they're just gently connected to the tree. Maybe I use a little bit of this brown for the bird's beak. You could use black or brown for some of these darker features. Totally up to you. I'm going to use brown for right now. I've used black in the past. Maybe I'll put in a large round eye so we get our bird's eye in place. We're just doing basic forms. You can use a little bit of the brown to like outline the wing. You can see we're just creating a little bit of darker contrast here, maybe a little bit on the underside of the wing, the tail here. And you can play with your little brush strokes, little dashes and dabs, little swashes, just to add a little bit of this texture to the bird. You can use the tip of the brush Just gently get that on. So this is the darker areas of the bird. We're going to do lighter areas of the bird next. So some lighter areas of the bird will be in a light blue color. So when you're ready to try this, I'm mixing a light blue over here, right in between the white and the blue, which is really nice. And you can paint the underside of like under the bird's eye, the light blue, maybe a little bit of light blue on the top of the head, around the eye. Maybe around the whole eye. The whole bird's head is fairly light in color, so if you wanted to paint the bird's head this light blue, you can. We'll add in a little bit of more of the darker blue after. And then under the bird's chin is actually really, really light. So if you wanted to add like a little bit of white on the underside of the bird's chin, this is where you can kind of play with a blend of colors. So the bird's chin, really on top of this wing here, under the wing is lighter, and we'll add more light colors. But you can kind of play with, the bird's chest is going to be fairly light. So this whole area, this is the bird's chest right in his space, is fairly light in color. And then you're going to fill the rest of the bird here with like this medium tone. So you could play with your brush strokes. This is really fun. You can play with little brush strokes to do little feather-like detail. Now with acrylics, you can add in different colors while it's still wet. So come in, grab a little bit more of this, use the tip of the brush, do little vertical swatches, do little tiny brush strokes. And you can do more as you please, so you can come in and do little brush strokes. Find a brush that you like. As it dries, you can come in and add more detail. But this is just a good starting place. If you want to get a little darker as you come to the underside of the bird, just use the tip of the brush. This is where painting takes a little practice. It's just playing with the tools that you have. And in this case, it's the tip of the brush, finding a brush with a nice small bristles. I'm just doing soft vertical brush strokes to create little feather-like textures. I'm doing it a little darker down here, and I'm kind of feathering it up, so it's kind of feathering like a gradient, so light to dark. And I'm playing with those colors over here. And on the bird's head, there's like a little bit of a dark line behind the eye to the back. A little bit of a white spot on the bird's nose. Bird's chest can have some white on it if you wish, so you can play with your colors here. You can always bring in more white to create some lighter areas. Again, the wing is dark. I'm not touching the wing. Bringing in a little bit of white on the bird's chest. You can even bring in some white on the feathers on the chest if you wanted to here. I'm just using the tip of the bristles and just kind of combing in a little bit of extra highlighting. And if you do too much white or do too much of a blue, you can always paint over it. But just play with soft brush strokes here. A little bit of white on the front of the eye, maybe by some by the mouth. Just use the tiny little brush, the tiny little bristles on the end of your brush. That will help you create some of this bird-like texture. So you're going for like a lighter mid-tone of the bird, and then at the base of the bird, it's a little bit darker. So you can play with that. This is your bird, so you can play with, do as much or as little detail as you wish. But have a really soft hand. Okay? Kind of fun. You can add a little bit of this light, a little bit of the lightness to the tail if you wanted to. A little bit of lightness, a little bit to the wing if you wanted to add just a little bit of softness to the wing, or a little bit of highlighting. So you can see our bird has really kind of come to life. So take a few minutes and play with that. I'm going to make a little bit of a lighter brown, and on the top side of this beak, I'm going to do a little bit of a lighter line. A little bit of lightness on the top of the beak to show that the light is hitting the top of the beak. So play with your details. You can play with a lighter brown if you wish. But the wing is darker, the tail is like that darker blue with some lighter highlights, but the body has a combination of the light and the dark colors. The other thing I'll share is you can take a little tiny bit of white paint on the tip of your brush and you can do a little white dot on the bird's eye. Look at that, on the dark part of the eye to really bring it to life. And if you wanted to put a little bit of white around the bird's eye, kind of like white eyeliner, you could add a little bit of extra lightness to the bird's eye. And that just adds a little bit of character to the bird, which is kind of fun. It's a little bit of a fancy level 2 tip. But look at the bird's face really just came to life with some of those details. And down by the bird's feet, you can make it a little darker. So maybe some of this brownish bird's underside of the bird's body can be a little darker, right? I'm using brown and blue. You can certainly use black if you wish. But I'm using the brown because I already have it out. But give yourself as much time as you wish to work on this step. Just slowly feathering this in. And then we're going to let it dry. So we're going to let our bird dry. You can always come back to it. So again, I added a little bit of white on the top of the head, a little bit of white around the eye using the tip of a small brush, a little bit of white on the tip of the beak, and then I like the lightness in the bird itself. So go ahead and keep an eye on the time. Go ahead and give yourself another 5 or 10 minutes. If you want to take more than that, you can. And when you're ready to move on to the next step, go ahead and you can hit play again on the video and you can join me for the next step. All right, so if your bird is done or like you're happy with it, you want it to dry, you can move on to the next steps with me now. I'm going to pick out what flower colors I want to use. So I'm going to do pink or reddish purple flowers. And I just put some red paint on my plate. Now, if you want to make like a fuchsia with some blue and purple, you could totally do that. I'm just going to start out by making pink with red and white mixed together. So I'm going to take a scoop of this white and I'm going to mix a white and red together to make a softer color. Maybe you want to make it a little orangey. Maybe you want to do a little bit of an orangey flower. You could add in a little bit of yellow here. I might mix in a little bit of blue to give it a little bit of a purple tone. So find a color that you like. This is kind of a, let's see what this color looks like. It's kind of like a dark bubblegum pink. And I'm going to spin my brush and I'm going to do abstract flowers. If you want to do specific flowers, you can, but I'm going to just come in and just do little clusters of flowers. And I'm just going to do some dabbing here, there. And you can see I'm just doing little bunches and I'm doing little brush strokes. You can do on top of the green. I am going to just focus on some of the branch areas first. What I want you to think about is like, what is the shape that your clusters are creating? Are you doing full clusters? Maybe I just do a few buds here and there on this branch. See that? But we're going to do a big cluster of flowers right behind this bird. So I'm going to pretend like there's a big bush of flowers right behind this bird. So I'm going to kind of do some abstract dabbing to create a little bit of like the bird is in front of like a cluster of like lilac flowers, like as an example. And I might do a little bit of an outline around the bird with this pink, just to show the viewer like the bird is still the focal point, but there are flowers behind him or her. So for me, I'm going to I'm going to come down around the legs down here on the underside of the tail. And I'm just going to kind of fill this in. And now you can see there's something going on kind of behind the bird, right? There we go. So now you can see that there's flowers behind the bird. There's a flower. There's something happening back here. So I'm just going to slowly build out this flower behind the bird. And I need to try to create a little bit of a top for it. So I'm going to kind of create the top of the flower up here, just to kind of give it a little bit of structure. And I'm just going to fill it out. So if I draw like an imaginary line, like this is the flower cluster right here, and you can see it has a little bit of a shape to it. Okay, but the bird is coming out on top, right? So I'm going to do a similar kind of flower structure over here. You can kind of pick and choose where you want your flower clusters to be, and I'm just doing kind of abstract brush strokes. I am going to bring in a second color to these flowers, these blossoms. Flowers, they can be whatever you want. Try to be open-minded to the clusters that you're creating. Lean back in your chair, consider a little bit of mindfulness of what you're using and where and why. I love incorporating mindfulness into my classes. It really allows us to kind of be like thoughtfully reflect on what we're doing along the way. So I'm just going to put in a few of these down here. I'm not going to go too crazy. And I've found a brush that I like. I'm fairly abstract with my brush strokes. I'm visually adding this color. I'm going to add just a few flower buds here on the underside of my bird, so it looks like fairly natural. I'm not going to have too many flowers down here. I'm going to keep it fairly straightforward. It's all about the composition, and you as an artist, you can make choices of what you want to add and where. I might add a little bit of greenery down here. I'm not going to go too far. I like the simplicity of this branch. And I'm also I'm not going to add too many flowers on the top side of this. Just going to do a couple here and there. See how it's just a simple array. I really want the bird to be the primary focus of my composition. And I don't even need a lot of flowers down here. And I'm going to add a secondary color to these. So I'm going to add some green. So again, if you need to outline your bird to really make the bird jump out, like my bird is definitely on top of these flowers, you can certainly do that. Now you can consider adding a secondary color to these flowers. So if you like purple, maybe I'll take a little bit of blue, mix it with my red. If you like orange, you could do a little bit of an orange accent on your flowers. I'm going to see what purple looks like, see if I like it or not. Just do a little touch of purple like that if you want it. So on the underside of every other bud, you could just do a little bit of purple. I might do a little purple and orange because, hey, why not? One of the things about art is just kind of trying new things. I'm just going to do a little bit of both. Just see what happens. I'm just doing little tiny brush strokes with the tip of my brush. Some of you may be really detail oriented and you may want to spend more time on this. Feel free to do that. That's one of the benefits of having a recorded video for you to follow. I have a lot of live classes, but I also have a lot of recordings that are available for folks. One, if you can't participate in the live event, but also two, if you just want to spend a little more time, you can always go back to that recording and, see how I blend a certain color, see what characteristic I added, where I added it, how I added it, etc. So you can see the purple accent's really quite cool. It's just adding a little bit of a darker undertone to some of these abstract flowers. So just clean off your brush as you go. Always kind of check yourself. Do I like the brush I'm using? Should I use another brush? Those are all the things that you should be thinking about along the way. So this is where the point of the class where you're really going at your own speed. I want you to consider adding and making adjustments to your green leaves at this point. So for me, I'm going to take a little bit of green and a little bit of this brown. And I'm just finding a green color that I like. I really want like a sagey green, which means I need to mix a little bit of white with this to make it lighter. So I want a gray kind of sage green color. So I'm going to grab a little bit more white. I have a little brown, which is helping me give me that more dull tone. I'm getting there. It's kind of it's almost a mossy color. Just take your time and find the colors that you like. Think, do I want a darker color here or do I want a lighter color? And try to keep your paint all together in a little pocket in the middle. So that's definitely getting closer. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to come in and maybe I want some more specific like leaf-like detail. Maybe I want to just do some green buds here or there. Maybe I want the tips of my leaves to be a little bit more specific. You can come in here and make more deliberate details using the tip of your brush. You can do 2 tones of leaves. You can do light leaves and dark leaves. We do a lot of that in my classes. I might come in with a darker green and do a second coat with do a little bit of a darker undertone to some of these. Anywhere you don't have any little green leaves, you can kind of tuck some in. So like down here, I didn't really have any. I might tuck in just a few green down here just to kind of continue for the eye. If you wanted to connect some of these abstract leaves, you could. You don't need them everywhere. Again, it's the mindfulness of just kind of pausing and stepping back. But having a little bit of green pocketed with some of these flowers looks really quite nice. This is one big flower cluster here behind the bird, so I'm not adding too many there. But I have a nice balance of green. I am going to make a darker green as a complement. I'm going to use the brown. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'll give it a shot first. Sometimes it's worth experimenting. If you mix green and black together, you'll get like a true forest green, which is probably where I'm going to resort to because I really want more contrast. But I'll use the brown first to see, just because it's on my plate and I don't want to waste it. See if this gives me the dark effect that I'm looking for. So on the right side of every leaf, I could just do a little bit of a brown dot, a little bit of a brown detail to add a little bit of shading. It's not too bad, but if you want like a true forest green, you could use black. But I'm just going to use the tip and I'm going to spin my brush on the side to have a nice fine point. I'm just adding a little bit of this detail. It also draws your eye in, creating depth to the object. So one thing that's important for depth on this painting is the underside of your bird should be fairly dark in color. So, because I want you to see the underside of that belly. So if you don't see the underside of your belly, be sure to do some, like a dark line or darker colors where your legs are, so your bird really jumps out. And you can spend, on a painting like this, we could easily spend an hour, 2 hours, even 3 with all these details, but we usually just take our time and just do as much or as little as you wish, right? This is all about our own time to bring a little bit of wellness back into our lives, to unwind, to just take time for ourselves, really, right? And one of the most magical things about painting is that I'm here to coach you and support you, stay out of your way, but encourage you to try new things and be open-minded to incorporating your own ideas. I'm going to put a couple more green leaves down here, and I'm going to reflect on my work. Some of you may get to a point, you're going to say, Megan, I think I'm done, I'm almost done. That's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. You can add tiny little kind of stick-like tiny little details if you wish with the tip of your brush. Maybe like there's little thorns or little broken sticks on the branch. If your branch looks like it needs a little love, you can always add like a little bit of light brown to the underside of the branch, the brown branch itself, to like give it a little bit of texture. There's a lot of different things you can do. So I'm just going to add a little bit of light brown touches to this branch itself to bring it to life. But I absolutely love how this has come out. Again, I always encourage you to go at your own speed. Feel free to comment on the video below if you have any questions, but I hope that you enjoyed today's class. I would love for you to check out our Patreon community if you're not already a part of it. There's a really great community there where you can kind of take a picture of your artwork and share it with others. And if you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out. My name is Megan, and I own Paint and Sip BT, or Painting with Megan on Patreon. And I hope you have a great day. And again, thanks for being here. Take care, everybody. There's just a couple more things I wanted to share with you as a bonus tip. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to the buds on this as well. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to use a small brush. And I'm going to take a little bit of this red, a little bit, and I'm just going to make it a little bit orangey, just a touch, fairly still light in color. Mix it around. And if it's a little orangey, that's totally fine. I might add a little bit of white to this. A little bit of white. I'm going to mix this around really good. And I'm just going to lighten it. And this is going to be kind of a fun, bright accent detail for these flowers. So this is a little bit of brightness that I'm adding. I'm going to grab a little bit more white. And this will really make things pop. So I'm going to see what this looks like. I'm going to spin my brush around. And I'm going to add in a little bit of this orange-like detail in spots. So you can see it just adds a nice pop of color, like there's little tiny dots on some of these buds. Maybe on every other bud, you put just like a little bit of orange. It just makes it a little bit more vibrant, with a little touch, a little extra detail of, this is like an orangish yellow. You don't have to do it on every single bud, but you can kind of pop around. I'm just doing little dots with the tip of the brush. You can do big dots, you can do small dots, but this is just a beautiful accent. Sometimes the more detail you add in, the more your picture will come to life, and I wanted just to take an extra minute to show you this. And you can also come in with some darker colors too to add some more depth. So we did that with a little bit with the green leaves. We added a little bit more darker depth. And I'm just going to add a little bit more here. And it really transforms your picture when you bring in the lighter tones and the darker tones. It just makes it look a little more realistic. And it adds some extra character to your flowers. So there's the lighter touch. I'm going to show you a little for a moment just what a darker touch would look like with a little bit of brown in between. And you want to use some of your smallest brushes that you have for this, because you're going to use the tip of the brush only. So I have a little bit of brown here. I'm going to show you what a little bit of contrast looks like. I'm just going to bring in a little bit of darker contrast in between some of these flower buds. So maybe on the edge of some of these, maybe towards the base, you can bring in a little bit of shade. It creates a little bit of separation. Creates a little bit of separation. And you can see how it adds just a little bit of separation between these. It's kind of like it's not just one big flower, it's lots of little flowers. that make this up. So I encourage you to try that as well. You can see what it does. It brings in just a little bit. And then if you don't like any of this, you can always cover it up by a little of that base pink again. Lots of options. Lots of options. But I wanted to take a minute just to show you that as a little bonus feature for our class today. Again, I cannot wait to see your work. I hope you do share it with me. Painting with Megan, Meagan, at Patreon. I look forward to seeing you. Take care, everybody. Thanks again for being here.